What does success mean to you, and how do you measure it? This week I had someone refer to one of my projects, which I absolutely love, as a failed project. And can I tell you people, it hit me like a ton of bricks. And I began to wonder about what success and the measurements that we use for success, what they really are, and who owns those measurements. When you look at what an indicator of success is, an indicator is like a gauge. It's a thing that indicates the state or the level of something. So I asked myself, what is the thing, what is the indicator that actually measures my success or the success of anything that I do? Because people have different perspectives on success. And it really took me back to Genesis. In Genesis, we all know the first question that God asked man, it was, where are you? And the second question, interesting, was, who told you? So often we tend to believe what other people say, and that can cause us to hide away. There was Adam and Eve hiding away, and God said, who told you? Words have power, and when people say things to you, it affects you, and until you actually recalibrate and understand what measurements you're really looking at. In Psalm 16 verse 2, the Bible says that the Lord weighs the heart or the spirit of a person. Wow, God has a set of weighing scales, That, as a woman, I'm so aware of what scales mean to me. I know my number. I'm sure you know your number too. I know my number is ever before me. And some days I feel, oh Lord, turn the dial down, But that's life. We know what we weigh in the natural. But there is a divine scale that measures the weight of our lives. And that is truly how we measure our success. So often we think we need to measure up to other people's expectations or the standard that they set for us, rather than what God sets for us. And it reminded me of a story in the Old Testament with King Nebuchadnezzar. He had a son, and his son was, really successful. In human terms, he was wealthy. He was a king. He had everything he needed, and he was living a life of opulence and splendor. And here he was, right in the middle of a party where he was using gold goblets. And all of a sudden, right in the middle, there was this finger, a supernatural finger, that began to write on the walls of his palace. And he really needed the interpretation for that. What is this mysterious writing on the wall? The king found the interpretation of the writing on the walls quite alarming, because it talked about God's scales. It said, you have been weighed, your life has been weighed on the scales, and you have been found wanting. In the midst of his revelry, in the midst of his seeming success, when everything around him screamed success in human terms, the measurement, the weight, the scales that God used, the divine scales, found his life wanting. And that was a real reminder to me, once again, that there are different measurements that are used in life. God has a different set of measurements to man. Man measures by factors, indicators that are so different to God's. And I really want to live my life, and I urge you to live your life so that we measure up to God's expectations, so that our life, when it's weighed in that final day, in that final analysis, we would be found to have lived our lives in sync, our lives measuring up on the divine scale. That is true success. That's true success. When everything else is said and done, that is true success. So how do you measure success? Do you use the human measurements, of what people say. Who told you? Who told you? Who indicated to you? What indicators did you allow yourself to be measured by? God has scales. I know my number in the human realm. I know my number, people. But I want to be found in sync with God's weight when He weighs my life. That's success. So how does your life measure or weigh on the divine scale? Because fundamentally, that's the only thing that truly matters.